Hello once again, everyone. Hopefully the audio is nice and clear. So this is a tour of the grounds ahead of Yeehaw 2024. We are at the Huntsville Speleological Society. For those of you that don't know what that word means, they're basically cavers. And so we're using their property again for this year as well as next year. So I thought it would be good if I went ahead and toured the grounds, give you an idea of where things are going to go. And this is part one of a two-part video. Next video will be about what you should bring with you, besides, of course, your fighting kit, just to make your time at the melees a little bit easier. So what we're currently looking at, this is the check-in building, essentially. This is a much bigger building than it seems. It's locked up right now, so I can't go in there. But in essence, all of our gear is going to be in there. That'll be where the check-in desk is. That'll be the place that we start the day and end the day. And it also will be locked up overnight, so between the 2 days you could leave your stuff in there if need be. We want to keep it nice, but it's just one big empty room, essentially. Meanwhile, just turning down from there, we have a massive parking lot, so there's someone for scale. It's plenty big, and this is the upper parking lot. This is where we want you to go first, so you'll come up the road that I'll be walking down in a moment. You'll park here, you'll walk straight into that building, check in, get yourself squared away, and do whatever else we need to do. And so we'll make sure all of that is taken care of to begin with. Then from there, what's going to happen is we're all going to come out, we're going to assemble, and we're going to make our way down the field for fighting. So I'm going to walk over there, and I'll pick up again in a moment. Okay, so I've moved to the other side of the parking lot. So just for reference, this is us looking down the large hill that I'm about to talk about more, but that's where we were. So you'll be walking down this way, and there'll probably be some cars where I'm currently standing, at least a couple, but we want to try and not park too crazy close to the end. Not that there should be many arrows coming this way, but just in case. So we'll be fighting on this large field here that I will just kind of gradually walk into and hopefully not fall down a gopher hole or anything. So this area up here, we won't necessarily be fighting in this. You want to think of the field as starting where that stump over there is. That was kind of the top of the hill as far as we're concerned. Though, who knows, maybe if things are going well, we might go ahead and back it up a little bit further. But just for comparison of size and scale, the other end of the field is on the opposite side of that bridge over there. So that little tree that kind of stands on its own, that crooked one, you can kind of say that's the middle of the field. So we've got plenty of space to work with. Of course, it'll be November, so there'll probably be a little bit less foliage. You'll be able to see a bit further, but we'll see exactly what the weather does. And as far as also fighting area goes, so we've got this area here. This will be whatever side that's holding the top of the hill. So let's go and use the objective battle, the final battle, as our way of understanding the field. So this is the top. That stump there would be the respawn point, though depending upon numbers, we may move that back to be more around here. We'll see how people are doing. Meanwhile, over to this side, you see how there's kind of that clearing indent? That's going to be where the moat and bailey for the nobleman is going to be. So close enough that we can go down there and deal with it, but far enough it is an active choice. And then far down there, if you can see that creek, that little corner there is going to be where the baggage train is, and then on the other side of that, that'll be where the attacking side starts. And the most important thing as far as understanding how all of this sets up is the road. So let's go over there and let's talk a little bit about how the road works. Okay, so now I'm standing just parallel to where I was a moment ago. I'm on the road itself. You can think of the road as being lava. So everything on this side, that's Yeehaw melee stuff. Everything on this side, that's meant to be either day 2 sparring, which we'll talk about later, or also support staff. So if you're bringing people that don't want to fight but just want to help you in your armor, or also we do have a couple local spectators and volunteers that come through. They stay on this side during the event, and so they're safe. We shouldn't have very much traffic coming up and through over the course of the day. It's usually a bit of a rush, calms down, lunchtime, bit of a rush again, and then calms down again. But we do want to try and keep the road relatively clear. So if for whatever reason you need to exit the field, coming off onto the road is a good idea. It's a good safe way of getting entirely out of the melee, because we want to make sure that's going kind of right up against those trees. Now, as well, this is where we talk about you being efficient with the things you bring. So remember, that's the building where all your stuff is. So we want to make sure that we take, and again, this will be the part 2 video, you take everything you might need down with you. So if we're coming from there, melees haven't started yet, here's where we're gonna go. Okay, so just for clarification, this is where the stump is. So here's the road again. I've only walked down about maybe 10 feet. Those buildings are where you want to be keeping your stuff. So all they are is a bunch of covered pavilions, and they are nice pavilions. So we've got that stage over there is kind of where we had all the gear sitting last year during the Totentons on day 2. We are more than happy to set stuff there under cover during the melees. So what did you want to have with you? Well, it'd be like your water bottle, maybe it's a chair or something for you to sit down on, though we have plenty of benches, as you can see. And then of course, for those of us that have a little bit of difficulty sitting in a bench in our harness, you also have the concrete lip there that you can sit on. But basically this little area here, this kind of Crystal Lake-esque looking place, this is where I want you to have all of the things that you might need over the course of a 4-hour fighting period, just about. So anything that you don't immediately need can stay up back at the top. Everything that you do though, so your water, etc., I want that to be here. And so as soon as we all come down, just go ahead and deposit that stuff here. We want to, of course, keep it nice, don't just sling things everywhere. But I want to make sure that you guys don't have to go up and down the hill every time you forget something or send a runner. The more we have staged here, the easier it will be. Let's also go around to the other side and talk about a couple faculties. Okay, sorry I may have to speak a little loud to be heard over the road, but this is the side of the building where also we have our lower bathrooms located. So they're just right there. Of course, storing stuff in here or under the other pavilion there, but these are our lower bathrooms, so you'll be able to not have to run all the way up to the top of the hill. And again, you've got plenty of space to set things, so kind of don't be shy. Relatively straightforward as well. I'm sure some people may even choose to eat down here if they wish. We're gonna once again have an hour for lunch, and we'll talk about the logistics of that a little later. But some people may order in, some people may go out. We want to be nice and quick about it so we can get plenty of fighting done. Speaking of fighting, let's get back to the field. Okay, so I just walked down the road a little bit, and now we're crossing the road back into the fighting territory. So this is now the field from the lower perspective. So I'm parallel with that little bridge, as you can see. You can't even necessarily see the top of the hill right now because it's obscured by foliage, but it's not an insignificant amount of space. We had 70-something people on the field last year, and they were not crowded. So that's one of the wonderful things about Yeehaw. There is no cap on people that could attend. But anyway, I digress. So this is not our bridge facade, by the way, just so we're clarifying. In fact, if you're in armor, I would highly recommend you avoid going on this bridge as much as possible. Not that it's not, semi-solid, I say, as I possibly fall through it, but multiple people that weigh a little bit more than your average person going across this might not be a great idea. So just try to avoid that if possible. But for those of you, again, following along with that final scenario, that's the ramp I was talking about. Our attacking force and our baggage train will actually come out from around there, so they get a little bit of surprise as they turn the corner. And then, like I said as well, this is the creek from the far side. We have that specialty rule in place, so during that final battle, if you are not in leg harness, you are welcome to try and cross this. However, that is only if you have only a sidearm, so bear that in mind. But that's where the little isolated bit of baggage train will be cut off from the rest of their friends. That's a story for another day, though. This is also where pretty much, let's call them Team A, the attacking team, is generally speaking going to have their respawn point, etc. during certain scenarios. So sometimes we use that post. There's another post over there. Sometime we'll use that tree. But just for sake of perspective, there's the whole field kind of in one shot. It's got a gradual slope that becomes much more dramatic once you pass the midline marker, that slightly crooked tree right there. But for the most part, pretty even ground. There's not a lot of holes or anything along these lines. And it should be cooler than it is today, so nothing too bad. Hopefully it'll also be overcast. That makes life a lot easier. Now, also, last year, we had a couple people who wanted to keep stuff on this side. That's for across the road. I want no spare gear sitting on this field so that we can make the most of it. This is year 2 of 3 that we are for sure at this property. I want to make the most of it every time we're here. And so this year is us really pushing the boundaries of what this field can do for us. Next year we'll see about going a little bit beyond it, but I digress. So again, going off that final battle scenario, because the loot train, the pillage the village, those all kind of happen vaguely around here, wherever we can set the facades so that they're even. The combat of the 30 is going to happen on this even bit of ground, or at least as even as we can get it, so that's relatively straightforward. But like I said, our objective battle, our attackers will be coming from here. Their first opportunity is to get the baggage train that was trapped by the river. Their second opportunity, if we go up this way, so you'd be sprinting up this way or marching up this way if you're feeling like being more careful, etc. That inlet is where the isolated moat and bailey would be. And then on the far side, of course, once I get to the other side of this foliage, that's where the defending team, that's the hill they hold. So it's not an insignificant amount of ground to cover, especially quickly and in harness. So the reason I'm going over all of this, and I do recommend, if you want another kind of good idea about the scale of this, go ahead and go back and watch the supercut, or at least the final battle footage from last year, to get an idea as to exactly how big this space is and about how long it takes for someone to cover it. But the reason I'm going over this is because I want you as a competitor to get to see the ground. Those of you that are wanting to come in full harness, this is not necessarily the most ideal place for some of our combat harnesses, for some of our tournament harnesses. You may wish to layer down slightly, even though it makes you it's not, bring everything you can bring, but that might work a little bit more to your advantage at times, because going up and down that hill several times over the course of the weekend is going to really be tiring. We want to minimize it as much as possible, but you're still going to do it on occasion. So making sure that you're not burning yourself out too quickly, I very much encourage that. So you want to plan your kit accordingly. This is that inland I was talking about. In fact, I think we're probably going to have, right where we're standing, bridge, door, and then marker for imaginary moat so that people can't just surround it. So just for clarification. But plan your kit accordingly. You don't want to be going back and forth over this with, for example, sabatons, probably not that useful, etc. But also as well, planning your harness or your team in such a way that if you need to be taken care of, everyone coming with you, or at least someone at this event, and we'll talk about that more in the calibration class, etc., knows what you require. So if you have a complicated helmet that latches pretty closed and limits your vision, then you want to make sure that the people around you understand they're essentially leading the blind. But also, if maybe you don't have access to that, plan accordingly. I would rather that people focus on being safe instead of being as armored as possible. And certainly, you are completely welcome to change out your setup as long as you get gear checked between. So when combat of the 30 rolls around, that should be I believe that should be the second armor, heavy armor specific scenario. You are more than welcome to layer up a little bit extra for that, because that's meant to be just even ground, stand and bang, versus on the other hand, Agincourt, the objective battle, or things like that, that's meant to be more mobile, so bear that in mind. But otherwise, let's do one final perspective so that you guys get an idea of exactly where everything sits. I'll just do a long take as I walk up to the top and remind ourselves of what we've looked at today. Okay, so here we are, right at the very entrance. It just comes right out of the city, so straight into it. We go through past the very ironic sign, and this will be where you're driving up. Fighting field to the left, all of the covered gazebo style things to the right. Again, when you first come in, you're going to proceed all the way up this road to the very, very top. Those of you that need to unload, weapons or things like that, I would again prefer you go all the way to the top, as we'll have the facades will be unloaded here, etc. Though we'll talk more about that another time. But you're going to just be driving all the way up through here. So we're passing the creek now on the left, the dry creek bed rather. There's the lower bathrooms and the stage, both of which can be used for gear storage / operating out of. Perspective more on the field. Again, spectators or support people will be here. We're about parallel with midfield. That tree that is leaning rather unfortunately is kind of the midway mark. That stump may or may not be there. We might, well, that log, we may move it, or I may use it. Why not? Starting to get into the incline, which I'll show from the side, so it doesn't look like much, but when you're going up and down it a couple dozen times in leg harness, it starts to feel like a lot. There's the respawn stump, though again, we may push that further up the way. Coming now to the crest of the hill, you'll just follow this into this massive parking lot, which in turn leads you straight back to where we began. So, all in all, that's your tour of the grounds. That's all we're intending on doing / utilizing this year. Next year, things will be different, but I'll talk about that after Yeehaw is done. As far as taking things on site, etc., I'll be doing a video about what you should bring for yourself. Maybe even talking a little bit about some armor mods that you may or may not wish to consider. I mean more like armor configurations given the terrain. But otherwise, there's our field one more time. I look very much forward to seeing it full of people fighting. Should be a great time. And otherwise, we'll go over some other Yeehaw things another time.